From the battlefields to the boardrooms, the spirit of a veteran is unyielding. Risk takers, disciplined executors, team builders. Military service has forged us into professionals with the ability to get it done. But what's next after service? Meet the legends. Fred Smith, founder of FedEx. Truett Cathy, founder of Chick-fil-A. Ross Perot, founder of Perot Systems. Phil Knight, founder of Nike. And Gordon Logan, founder of Sport Clips. They turned their military discipline into entrepreneurial success. And so can you. Why franchising? It's the ideal pathway for a vetrepreneur. A proven business model, a roadmap to success, and an industry that understands the skills you bring. Franchising means using proven systems, intensive training, and a support system designed to make you successful. 1 out of every 7 franchises is owned by a military veteran. You can join their ranks. Your next mission awaits, and we're here to guide you. Your legacy is just beginning.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Brown. I am a coach here at Vetrepreneur. What a great video, very inspiring. So I feel like dropping down and doing some push-ups. But, we're here today to talk about franchising, which can be a fantastic option for veterans because it's a perfect hybrid of business ownership without having to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch. You're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And as the video talked about, 1 in 7 franchise owners or franchisees are veterans, a way higher proportion over indexing of veterans in franchising than their percentage of the total population. And you might ask yourself, why is that? Why do veterans gravitate towards franchising? It's because of their fortitude, work ethic, and ability to follow procedures. So I'm a Navy veteran and I have owned a couple franchises. And if you have ever thought like I had of, I always kind of dreamed of owning a small business, being my own boss, but I really had no idea of doing what. And franchising supplied the what, the business plan. Veterans are trained to get a SOP, standard operating procedure, and then get out of your way and let you execute the plan. So done right, franchising can really help veterans find financial freedom, personal freedom, and satisfaction of owning a business and providing a meaningful service, be a good employer, that kind of thing. So we at Vetrepreneur provide franchise coaching to the military community at no cost. This is a little bit of the agenda that we're going to go through today. We're going to do a boot camp where we're going to do franchising 101 and get into the details, talk a little bit about the franchise coaching due diligence process and registration. And then we're going to spend a majority of the time on a Q&A. So we really want to hear from you. And I am going to introduce my colleague, Chris Hale, who is a classmate of mine at the Naval Academy. Go Navy. After graduating from the Naval Academy, Chris went on to naval aviation, a career from 91 to 2000. He then co-founded Vetrepreneur in 2004. So we have a big anniversary with the mission really to connect military veterans to entrepreneurial opportunities. So Chris created the Vetrepreneur of the Year program in 2006, co-founded Navoba, which is the National Veteran-Owned Business Association, in 2007, with sort of the express, purpose and mission to promote purchasing from veteran-owned businesses. He's taught entrepreneurship classes and continues to do so to veterans through Robert Morris University. And he also continues coaching veterans and starting their own businesses today. So Chris, thanks for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sarah, thank you so much for that introduction. And when she says she can do push-ups, guys, she's not kidding. She was a runner at the Naval Academy. Fun fact, I have to tell this. I just told this to somebody else. We had about 960 people in our class at the Naval Academy. 79 of those were women, and Sarah was one of 2 sets of twins, female twins that we had in that class. So pretty long odds of that happening. But she's amazing. What an amazing franchise resume that she has, having done franchise development on the franchisor side, having owned a franchise, and now doing franchise coaching. So we're just really blessed to have her. Thanks for that really nice introduction. I am here in beautiful Niagara Falls, Canada. So tried to find a good spot where I had reliable Wi-Fi overlooking the falls, but it wasn't possible. So we get the lobby of the casino, the second floor down, where it's a little quieter. So, but really good to have everybody here. Sarah already, kind of mentioned a little bit, but franchising is a really amazing opportunity to do what I call sort of a hybrid between working for somebody else as an employee and owning your own business outright. This is one of my favorite things to do. And the reason is because we used to get asked all the time, listen, I've got a great, I've got a lot of interest in doing my own thing. I spent time in the military, which is kind of like working for a big company. I did that. I'm ready to do something different. However, I either don't have a great idea for a new business, and I don't have any real industry experience that's going to give me something that, the qualifications to kind of run my own shop. So really want to do the entrepreneurial thing, don't know how to do it, don't feel like I'm qualified. And the beautiful answer to that literally is franchising. And it gives you that opportunity to take somebody else's business plan that they have already implemented, already kind of seen what works and what doesn't, written down all the answers and given you the answers to the test. And all you got to do is go out and execute it. So it's a really, it's an amazing hybrid. It's an amazing opportunity. And as Sarah mentioned, veterans are very much overrepresented in franchise ownership. In fact, about 2x. And the reason for that is because we're used to operating, an SOP, which she mentioned an SOP. In naval aviation, which is what I did, we called it a NATOPS manual, Naval Aviation Training Operating Procedures Standardization. And it was this big, thick manual, and it told us exactly how to operate and maintain that aircraft effectively, safely, efficiently, and all the answers to the test, right? Took a long time to write that, took a long time to fine tune it. There was a lot of practical application, what works, what didn't, a lot of split testing. And at the end, what we had was this amazing manual that told us how to do that. That's exactly what you get in franchising. There's no guarantee that you're going to succeed, but the risk is mitigated pretty extensively. So throughout this we're going to spend maybe about the next 20 minutes or so talking through, the 101 to franchising, what we call the boot camp. And then we're going to have an opportunity at the end to take a number of questions. So some of the basic terms we'll cover. Franchisee, that's you. That's the person who licenses the intellectual property to own and operate a local version of that business that you're going to run in a certain geographical territory. The franchisor is what that's the mothership, right? That's the entity that created the franchise system from the very start. And then along the way, you'll be talking with various people that we will introduce you to if you use our coaching service. And those are franchise development people. They work for the franchisor. Sometimes they are direct employees. Sometimes the franchisor will outsource that development, but those are called franchise development folks. Okay, next slide. A lot of the facts here, I think some of a lot of stuff we've already gone over, but the bottom line is every year there are 2,500 veterans who will become a franchise owner. And the question is, will you be one of those, right? So we're talking literally like 7 to 8 veterans every day will become a franchise owner. So there's a lot of us, very much an overrepresentation. And I think one of the other cool things when we get to some of the fees that are involved in franchising for that startup is the franchising industry recognizes this. And they recognize that veterans have high success rates. They're really well suited for this kind of work. And they offer discounts on that franchise fee. There's really no other groups that are offered any sort of a discount on that franchise fee. Not all of them In fairness, not every single franchise offers that discount, but the vast majority of them do. And they don't do it out of the goodness of their heart. This isn't, hey, we love veterans and we want to say thank you for your service. Yes, all that's true, but they do it because they want to provide an incentive for you to represent their brand, because they know what you came from, they know what you're made of, they know the kind of discipline and work ethic that you're going to put into the business. Okay, next slide. Next slide. There we go. Yeah, some of the advantages, you're going to learn from somebody else's mistakes. I've started several businesses, and I can tell you firsthand, no matter how much you think you know going into it, you are going to make lots of mistakes, and they are at a minimum going to be costly in terms of money, in terms of time, and at a maximum, they could be fatal. And so, this is a way to kind of learn from somebody else's mistakes. It's a business model that has been proven out. Some of the franchises are going to be hundreds, sometimes even thousands of locations. This is a franchise that's very well built out. It's going to feel a little bit more like, working for a big company. There's not going to be nearly as much flexibility in a system like that. Some of these franchises are smaller outfits, right? They may be half a dozen or a dozen different franchises in the system. And the advantage there is you've got an opportunity to talk with and to get to know very well the ownership and the leadership group and the founders. And it's going to feel a little bit more on the entrepreneurial side when you get into some of the franchises that we call are emerging. So, but it's learning from somebody else's mistakes. It does not take all of the risk away. Make no mistake, owning a business is not a Disney ride with guardrails and all these other things. You can crash and burn. You can have some things that go wrong. There is no guarantee for success. However, that risk is greatly mitigated by the fact that you've got a system around you, not only a system that has been already proven out, but you've also got a support network. You've got a support network of what I call mom and dad, which is the franchisor who has a vested interest in your success. They want you to succeed because they will benefit from that in the long term in the form of royalty revenues. And there's also a support system of other franchisees within the system across the country. So if you run into issues, if you've got an opportunity you want to take advantage of, you've got those two support networks. When you start a business on your own, you don't have any of that stuff. Good luck calling a competitor in your market and asking them for advice on a problem that you're having. Doesn't happen. It does happen in franchising, and it comes in two ways: talking to brothers and sisters across the country or talking to mom and dad. Okay, next slide. You pay for that. We talked about franchise fees. Franchise fees are a one-time payment. Usually it's anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000. And you'll pay that, you'll pay that per territory. It's not usually, if you buy a 3-territory region, it's not going to be 3 times that. Usually it's a prorated reduced amount for additional franchise locations, but you'll pay that franchise fee upfront one time. And typically if that's where that franchise fee discount will apply if you're a veteran. The other fees, next slide, are called royalties. And royalties are a percentage of your revenue that will be charged for really the duration of you're going to run that. So that's what pays for all of the support that you're going to get, the folks that are employed at the franchisor level, access to the back office support. Sometimes there are marketing fees, things like that. But think of royalties as sort of those ongoing payments that pays for the support that you're going to get throughout the ownership of that franchise system. Next slide. A couple of different operating models. So, listen, I would tell you that all franchises will accept you if you are somebody who is willing to be what's called an owner operator. That's kind of like, I'm going to quit my day job, I'm burning the ships, and I'm all in. They love that, right? Because that means that you're going to give that franchise system your 100% undivided professional attention, and you're all in. There are, I would say, maybe 40 to 50% of franchises that will permit you to become what's called a semi-absentee. So that's where you're going to be spending maybe 10 or 15 hours a week, sometimes longer, sometimes 30 or 40 hours a week. But you will hire someone to kind of run the day-to-day operations. It's called manage the manager. So you as the owner will hire someone to run the day-to-day. They report to you. Typically in a semi-absentee situation, you're running the P&L, you're managing the finances of the business. But you might be interacting with customers to some degree, but you've got a day-to-day person that's kind of running operations. Like I said, maybe half of systems will permit that semi-absentee option, but it is available for folks. Next slide. This is an amazing document. If you've ever gone out and bought a business, done mergers and acquisitions, you know that the most difficult part of that is finding all of the information you need to review in order to make an informed decision on whether or not you should move forward with buying that business. The Federal Trade Commission has made that very easy, and it's in the form of what's called the Franchise Disclosure Document, or the FDD. This is a requirement, right? So you will absolutely get a copy of the franchise's FDD. It contains, you can see all the information there, 23 items that will talk about, has that business ever been sued? If so, what kind of suits are there? What are the backgrounds of the employees? How many of those businesses have opened and closed in the last year and over time? What are those success rates of those outlets? Item 19 is a really popular portion, which talks about the financial performance of the franchises within that system. Talks about all the initial fees. What do those look like? What's your startup fees going to be? So it really is just a full-blown document that describes all of the due diligence that you're going to need on that business. These are published annually. They're redone every year. And so it's just a great document. You will get this typically around maybe after 2 or 3 calls with that franchise system. They will give you this franchise disclosure document. It's called Disclosing You. And then you will have to sign for it. And a minimum, for your protection, a minimum of 14 days has to pass between the time that you sign for the FDD and the time that you're actually allowed to become an owner in that business. Okay, next slide. Yeah, some of the myths we get asked all the time. I want to open a business, a franchise, and it needs to be a Chick-fil-A, or it needs to be a Chipotle, or it needs to be a Subway. And a lot of people naturally think of restaurants when they think of franchising. I understand why. We all love to go and eat, and we all see that, right? But there are so many great businesses out there outside of food. And I would tell you also, food has a lot of challenges, right? The margins aren't usually so great. You've got a lot of employees. They're usually very entry-level, low-paid employees. So there's a lot of turnover. You're oftentimes working a lot of nights and weekends, so it maybe isn't the greatest lifestyle either. But listen, we represent restaurants, and we will, if we feel like it's a good fit, we'll put you into those types of businesses. However, what I would say is that food is one of 15 different categories that we use, industries. So it runs the gamut from home services, home cleaning, B2B businesses, senior care businesses, pet care, health and beauty, gyms. I mean, it runs the gamut. There's so many different types of businesses and industries that you can get into. And some of my favorite ones are the ones that are not all that sexy. Listen, it sounds cool to own a restaurant. Being a customer of a restaurant is probably a lot more fun than owning a restaurant, right? But there's a lot of businesses that may not sound too sexy, but they do very, very well. And is it too expensive? I'll let you be the judge. I would say that most businesses that do not require a big chunk of real estate, which is most franchises, might cost you somewhere between, on the low end, maybe 50 grand all in. There's not a ton there. There's a lot more when you get to 100 grand. And when you get upwards of $200,000 to $250,000 all in cost, oftentimes including working capital, that's about the price tag for a lot of businesses that aren't real estate anchored. So if you need real estate, typically that's going to be double that number and more, right? So you can get up into $400,000 or $500,000 and definitely up into the multiple millions. Is it too risky? Again, you be the judge, right? I would tell you that there is risk. However, there's risk in everything, right? Certainly less risk, I think, in franchising than in developing a new business model from scratch. But working as a W-2 is not risk-free either, right? You don't necessarily have control over whether you're going to continue to be employed or get promoted or those sorts of things. So, risk is relative. You don't need business experience, and you don't really need particular industry experience. In fact, sometimes, we get asked as skilled tradesmen that want to become business owners, right? I'm a plumber, I want to own a plumbing business, or I'm a painter and I want to own a painting business. Sometimes that works. A lot of times it doesn't, right? As a franchise owner, they don't really want you out there turning wrenches and putting paint on buildings and taking care of seniors if it's a senior care business, or flipping burgers if it's a food restaurant, right? They want you running the business, and the skills required to do that are very different than the skills that are required to perform the services of the business. So, industry experience definitely in most cases not required, and sometimes not even desired. Okay, next slide. We've broken down franchising, which can be a very intimidating, very lengthy, very gray, like where do I start, where does it end kind of a process. And we've chunked it down into 10 steps and 10 weeks. And this is really the core of what our coaching experience is like. What our job here, guys, is to say, if you've ever had a desire to own a business and franchising is right for you, we can guarantee you that we are going to get you to a decision point of A, is franchising right for you? And B, have we found the right franchise? And we're going to do that in 10 steps and 10 weeks. So I can't guarantee that you're going to get into franchising. I can't guarantee that you're well suited for it. I can't guarantee that the franchise that you like is going to like you, but I can guarantee you that we will get through and answer those questions for you. Why is that valuable? Because we talk to people all the time who go to what Sarah referred to earlier as the franchise buffet. And that is going to a massive cornucopia of food like you do on a buffet, right? Start Googling franchising and you're going to get a buffet of information from a lot of different sources. You don't know who to trust. You don't know how to consume it in the right order, right? Just like a buffet, you go get dessert first, and then let's get a little bit of meat, and we'll get some salad at the end if we have any room left in the tank. And it's not the right way to eat. And going to the buffet is not the right way to get into business ownership. What typically happens is people don't make a decision, right? They never get to that decision point. So they go to the buffet forever and ever and ever, and never get to a point where they feel like they have enough information from enough trusted sources to make an accurate decision. And like I said, if that means no, that's okay. Because, when you're 75 years old or 85 years old towards the end of your career, and you're looking back on your career, you don't have any regrets. That's our goal. So we run you through this, right? You'll have a coach that walks you through every step of this. You'll have a discovery call with that coach. Prior to that, there's a few self-assessments that we do. It's a combination of science and art. We'll start whittling down this massive possible list of franchises that we can put you into, and we'll start to whittle that down based on lifestyle factors, skills and interests, geographical considerations. What is your why? What do you want to do? Whole host of information. And we'll start making introductions to you or for you to franchise development folks. We'll talk about funding. We've got a great team that can talk through that. You'll get the FDD and we'll go through there. We'll write down any concerns and questions you have. We'll make sure that all of those are addressed. We'll go through validation, my favorite part. This is where you get to talk with other franchise owners who are in the system. Oftentimes those are veterans, and you get to ask them, hey, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? What are some of the challenges? How does the franchisor support you? How do you get support from fellow franchise owners? And my favorite question, how much money do you make, right? The FTC has a rule where you cannot make earnings claims If you're a franchisor or a franchise coach, right? You can only stick to the stuff that's in the item 18 that has been, been put through the FDD. However, when you talk with other franchise owners in the system, they are free to tell you exactly and reveal to you how much money they make, how long it took them to make that, and so forth. The next step after that, we're getting towards the end here, is Discovery Day. That's when you get to go and meet personally with the franchise development folks. You get to meet with the people who are running the business. Typically, there's going to be an interview with the CEO and sort of a final approval. If they like you and you like them, they'll say, they'll offer you the chance to be awarded a franchise. And then if you say yes, boom, that's step 10, you become a franchise owner. From there, and again, that's about 10 weeks, 2-3 months, somewhere in there. And from there, you'll have, anywhere from 2 months to upwards of 6 to 8 months, if it's a big piece of real estate that you will have to open that business. So when should you start this? A lot of people ask. The process to get from where you are now to owning a franchise system is about that 2 or 3 months, but you need to tack on 2 to 6 months and sometimes even longer after that to open. So we typically say if you're within a year of wanting to open a business, you should be starting this process now. Okay, next slide. I think we are to Sarah. You've got it.
Fantastic. Thank you. So there's a lot of questions that are already coming in, and a lot are around funding, but basic qualifications, really looking for what is that total investment, meaning what does the franchise require with equipment, with the one-time franchise fee, with some payroll insurance, all the things that you need to open a business. The typical range is about 100 to 200,000 all in, including the one-time franchise fee for most home-based service businesses. I have owned both. I've owned a senior home care business and a brick and mortar fitness franchise. If you're looking at a retail business, you're looking at more 2 times for a brick and mortar, and they usually take longer to open. Chris mentioned that a service franchise will take anywhere from 1 to 3 months to open after you sign a franchise agreement. Brick and mortar can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months after signing agreement. It takes time to find the right location, open, etc. As far as the minimum qualifications that you need to fund it, 680 minimum credit score. If you're thinking to yourself, I've had a few little issues and my credit is below that, we do have some concierge partners that may help you do some credit repair. And that may be part of your preparation in looking at becoming a small business owner if your credit is below 680. Liquid capital, that would be your investment. So of that total investment, you're looking at 20 to 30% of that you are going to invest. The rest can be funded. And obviously there's a lot of things that are individual to your situation and to the specific franchise that you're looking at. But liquid capital, as far as a cash injection, 20,000 minimum, that will limit the amount of options that you have. 50,000 is better. And then net worth. At Vetrepreneur, we have great resources to help you figure out what your net worth, a net worth calculator. So that is a total of the equity in your home, your retirement accounts, all the assets that you have in cash, stocks, and bonds. Doesn't mean you're going to invest all of that, but it just means what it qualifies you for. So some folks are like, why do we need to know this information? We just need to know the basic credit score, what you want to invest, liquid and net worth. It would almost be like telling your real estate agent, I want to look for a house, but not giving a budget or a pre-qualification on a loan. So that information is helpful for you. We don't want a client to fall in love with a franchise and not have a viable way to fund it. So now you're thinking to yourself, well, what are the various funding options? The most popular one that most people have heard of is an SBA loan. And the SBA, the Small Business Administration, is not a bank. They're a guarantor. There are some advantages in being a veteran with some fees and some other things, but an SBA loan is a very common vehicle for funding. HELOC, leveraging some of the equity in your home. One of the things that a lot of people have not heard of, but is very common in small business ownership, whether it's a franchise or not, is a ROBS, a rollover for business startup. That is taking retirement funds and using them. You start a C corporation. That we have relationships with reputable companies that help people do that. But you are self-funding and investing. And I use that when I left the McDonald's Corporation. I used my 401k to start up my business. There's not a tax event, but getting information on these options, those are all things that we would connect you to as part of our coaching. And then friends and family. When you start digging into franchising, you'll see that there are a lot of partnerships, folks that are spouses, significant others, with parents, adult children. A lot of people look at this and go, wait a minute, maybe I want my sister, my brother, my adult children involved. Maybe you want to leave a legacy for your kids. And having friends and family that may want to invest and be a part of your business, obviously no one's motivations are more aligned than other family members. And then there are some other non-traditional funding, unsecured loans, portfolio loans. Those are all things that you would learn a little bit more about. And we don't have strong opinions as to which vehicle that our clients use. We want you to be educated consumers on your funding options. Okay. Let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, good stuff, Sarah. I just want to reiterate, friends and family, if you've got parents who are in retirement age, Americans have never been wealthier. This generation that is, baby boomers, right? Sort of 60 plus is the most wealthy generation in world history. Now, that you may be lucky if your parents are one of those folks, or you may not be, right? But if you do have parents who are of that age, retired, and have a lot of money sitting around, and you feel like, and they feel like you're eventually going to get that when they pass, what great way to have them pass that to you while they're still alive and be able to enjoy, seeing all the fruits of their hard-earned money that they made, giving that to their child and watching their child open a business. So don't be afraid if you've got, a rich uncle or wealthy parents or what have you. And the other one is battle buddies. If you've got a friend, you can pull the combined net worth and liquid capital of two individuals who are good, close friends, whether that was in the military or whatever, and open a business together. That can work out very, very well. So those are great options. Listen, if you're interested in franchise coaching, we've talked about that a lot. Go ahead and click that QR code right there, or go to vetrepreneur.com/step-2, and you can sign up for that. Again, our goal is to get you to a point that you've got, can make a decision on whether franchising is right for you, and if so, which the right one. Our franchise coaching service is free. We are paid by the franchisor. If and when you become a franchise owner, we work with over 600 different franchises in 15 different industries. So we're about 40 deep in each one. And I guarantee you that we will get you to that decision point. You're going to work with some true professionals. On that note, good segue. Let's introduce some of those to you. Hopefully they're able to join us, unless they're talking with clients. And there they are, folks, our amazing team. Two of them are frozen. Now, what normally happens here when they're on another call is we show their still picture, but we've got a big old Paul Skeens. I live in Pittsburgh, right? Paul Skeens has taken over Major League Baseball. Paul Skeens mustache there, but we didn't do that here today. So Edgar was being a nice guy. But the incomparable Sarah Brown, who you've already met. And I would also like to say Judd Knatzer, also a Naval Academy grad, class of 96, retired Navy P3 pilot, and great business experience lives down in Tennessee. Mr. George DeCou, who is 31 years Air Force senior service and also a Chick-fil-A operator. So if you know anything about Chick-fil-A, it's about a 1.5 year process to get through the interviewing process to become a Chick-fil-A operator. And the odds of being selected are like, you probably have better odds of being an astronaut. It's amazing. It's very, very selective. And George was one of those. So he operated a high and was very, very successful operating a Chick-fil-A business in Amarillo, Texas for 9 years. And then has since joined us and is a coach. So, and finally, but last but certainly not least, Doug Herster. Doug is Navy P3 pilot as well, did about 9 or 10 years on active duty. And Doug hates when I say this, but Doug went to the best business school in the world, University of Pennsylvania, Wharton School of Business. So this dude's a smart guy. Doug, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Just a fun fact. Most of you don't know this, but Chris is like 6'5", so that camera has to be like 7 feet above the ground, which is impressive. But yeah, thanks for the intro. Just to say a quick thing or two. It is a great process. There's a lot of really dedicated people behind the scenes, all like-minded, trying to help veterans find great opportunities if it is right for you. And you're going to get out of it what you put into it. If you have 3 to 5 hours a week, you could take a meeting or two during normal business hours and really want to find out if this is the right thing for you. It is a great process. There's a lot of great connections we can make, and sign up for a discovery call and look forward to talking to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Sarah. So these are the coaches, guys. Your coach will be with you for that full duration from the time where you have that initial discovery call until the time when you become a franchise owner, and then we'll also stay in touch with you after that. But really, at that point, you sort of graduate from our program and you become a member of that franchise system, and the franchisor becomes your kind of your mom and dad at that point. So we've got the coaches. You've met some of our coaches. We've also got a great supporting cast. So there's a portal that we use here at Vetrepreneur, which really mirrors the whole franchise coaching process. A lot of the information that you'll get on the franchise systems. Sarah mentioned the net worth calculator. We've got an assessment that we put folks through, and you'll get the results of that assessment, which is really kind of gives us a lot of the science behind the matching that we can do. Works very, very well. We've got a great IT system. We've got a great customer support system that does a lot of our scheduling. So just a great team. And then outside of the Vetrepreneur team, we have access, and we've got partners that do things like SBA loans. If you've got credit issues, they can do credit repair. We've got lawyers that can help review franchise agreements and franchise disclosure documents. We've got CPAs that can help look at your custom, your unique financial situation and come up with custom financing solutions that minimize, your tax bill and things like that. Just an amazing team that we've got. Now, those outside partners, just in full disclosure, all of our services are free at Vetrepreneur. Sometimes those outside partners, if they're doing a loan for you, accessing a lawyer, those things, they will have fees associated with those, which will be disclosed prior to that. But a great network of people to work with. Okay, next slide. I think, we want to do, so these are just a few of the veterans that we've put through our system, and these folks have become Vetrepreneurs, like we like to call them. So you can see people from all walks of life, from all parts of the country, married, single, every branch of service, every age, every race, every ethnicity, just it's across the board, right? So people oftentimes say, well, is this the right time for me? The right time is, we'll help you determine what the right time in your life is. But, a lot of people also say, well, I'm waiting for the right time. And, just like any other major life decision, there's never a perfect time. So there has to be a right time or a good time. If you're waiting for perfect, you're never going to do it. But you can see we've got folks from all over, all walks of life who we've been successful putting into businesses. Next slide. If you get into this process, we ask that you give it the professional courtesy that you would give any other professional process, right? So, there's going to be a couple of hours of work on a weekly basis Those are going to take the form of calls, or you may have to look at some materials, look at some brochures, do some studying. We really encourage you, if you're married or in a relationship, have your spouse or significant other go through this process with you. Whether they're going to be involved directly in the business or not, they're certainly going to be affected and impacted by it. So it's really important that they go through that process with you. Otherwise, what ends up happening is at the end, hey, I found the greatest thing. This is what I'm doing. And that oftentimes is met with a lot of questions that you may not be capable of answering. And then we have to go back and do it all over again. So we really recommend that you come through that. But honor your commitments, right? Show up on time, be professional. This is a two-way vetting process. You're vetting the franchise, making sure, sort of interviewing them, but they're doing the same thing. And so we both need to put our professional hats on and show up on time, keep appointments, and do the homework that we're asked to do. If you do all that, guarantee we will get you to that decision point. Okay, I think we are at the point where we're going to take on some questions.
Fantastic. Absolutely great questions. And I'll just, or great points. I'll just put in there, my husband, Don, of 33 years, has not been involved in the day-to-day of any of my franchises, but was very helpful when I was doing my due diligence. You know, two heads are better than one, you know, and getting that perspective was very helpful. So we have a lot of great questions. So first, is the 401k liquid? And I would say a couple things. One, not really liquid, but let's say, you know, I think there's another question in here a little bit further down about, do we work with people right out of the military? What if you got out like 20 years ago? Fine, doesn't matter. You know, we work with folks that are active duty right now, and they're looking to retire or get out of the military, you know, within the next year, you know, and some people will start a franchise while they're still active duty, you know, and they kind of want that plan B already set up. So we will walk you through that. But I would say, if you think that you may move, or if, like, I live in Tampa and then I may move, or I may move to Texas, or I may move to Virginia, you may kind of want to decide where you're going to go before you start looking at something seriously, because where you put it has a big part of, is it available? You know, does it make sense in that market, et cetera. But back to the 401k. So is not immediately liquid, but if you're still working and you have an active 401k, you really cannot use that. But if you have a 401k that is not a Roth or a retirement account, that could be considered liquid and part of your equity investment into the business after you roll it over. That process typically takes about 6 weeks. So I would say, if you're thinking that might be your injection into the business, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, Sarah, if I could. I would say to be clear, there's two ways that you can use retirement accounts, and 401ks and TSPs are similar in the way that, you know, you can access that information or that money. You can take a 401k loan. Some of you may have already done that in the past, right? The 401k loan, if you don't have to, you know, if you pay that back, you don't get penalized, right? The other way is that Sarah mentioned, you can use the rollover for business startup, where you form a C corporation. You're essentially investing some of your retirement money into your business. So, and the other way, and I don't know, this isn't awesome, but it is a way, you can just withdraw money from your 401k. You'll take a 10% penalty. You'll pay the taxes on that, but you are able to do that. So there are ways for that to be liquid, and there are ways to access it. By the way, I wanted to just say, behind us there, what you can see, that plaque, that wooden plaque, that's what we give to all of our the veterans that go through our system and become Vetrepreneurs. It's a real important milestone, and we commemorate that. I just wanted to point that out. It's a really nice wall plaque. We have a company down in Winchester, Virginia, that's a veteran-owned business and has all service-disabled veterans hand making these plaques. It's called Flags of Valor, and we really commemorate that date that you become a Vetrepreneur. It's a big anniversary day. So I just wanted to point that out. Back to you, Sarah.
No, thanks, Chris. So, you know, the one specific question is, I'm still active duty. will retire from the military soon. Is active duty or veteran status better in regards to financing options for an SBA loan? I would say not necessarily. You know, whether you're a veteran, retired, or active duty, no, not really. It really depends on how much time do you have right now. And, you know, do you want to do something owner operator or semi absentee? Yeah, but being active duty or a veteran, really, there's no difference, you know, from a tax perspective or to the SBA. Okay, there's a lot of questions. This is kind of interesting. We around what happens on an exit strategy. And I think this is great because a lot of people do not think about this. And I'm a firm believer you shouldn't buy anything unless you know what you can do with it at the end, you know, whether it's a home or a business. So there was a question around, hey, I have a successful franchise. What is my exit plan? Well, there's a couple things. And then there are also some other questions around all things being equal. Should I start up a franchise or buy an existing franchise? And then there's a third question around why shouldn't I just buy a non-franchise existing cash flow positive business? And the answer is you can do any one of those things. Of course you can. Franchises typically have better resale multiples on the exit strategy because it's not about the cult of Sarah Brown or Chris Hale. It's about the franchise system. You know, we work with a lot of people that are consultants and they love their consultancy business, but there's not a lot of resale in that because it's about them and they're the subject matter expert. And if they go away, there's not a lot of resale value in that business if they're providing a lot of the services. Where a franchise, there is a lot of value in that, you know, with the brand, the support, etc. So in franchising, a resale is called a transfer. And as you go through the due diligence process, you'll understand what that process looks like. A resale, whether it's a franchise or an existing non-franchise business, is always relatively cloak and dagger, you know, because a lot of the value is around, you know, the team and the book of business. And you don't want to go out and say, hey, I'm selling my business before you're prepared behind the scenes, you know, to talk to the team members and the customers and prepare everybody. So what I'll say is you are going to probably pay a premium for a franchise and or an existing business, whether it's a franchise or not, but it's ready, set, go. So I would say resales for most people really only make sense if you have owned a business before or have some business experience because you are in it. You know, you, instead of doing the ramp and hiring people and getting your own team, you know, it's ready, set, you have this existing business and go. Do we represent some resales? Sure, but they're few and far between. A majority of our clients, 90+%, start a franchise from scratch. It allows you to walk before you run and get that support. Chris, anything you wanted to add on that?
No, very well said. The only perspective I might add is when I look at the difference between those two things, I think it really, when you choose to buy an existing business, whether it's a franchise or not a franchise, they typically fall into one of two categories. Either A, they've been successful and you're going to pay a premium for that because you typically are going to pay a multiple of the annual earnings of that business, or B, it's not been successful and you're going to pay a discount. You might get an existing business for cheaper than a franchise, you know, than what we call white space, right? A new franchise system. So, however, in either of those cases, in the case of a premium where someone has been very successful and you're going to pay a lot more, you need to make sure that you can go in and do as good or better of a job because, you know, kind of taking on a championship team, there's oftentimes nowhere but down, right? So you need to make sure you can go in and do it as good or better. Same thing really with buying a business at a discount. That business may have not been successful and you better be really sure that you have properly diagnosed why it wasn't successful and be very confident that you're going to go in and do things differently and correct the things that weren't done properly. Otherwise, you may find yourself in the same situation. So there's an inherent amount of risk in buying any existing business. The last thing I would say on that is that the due diligence for an existing business is a lot harder and a lot riskier, because it's like buying a used home or a used car. You don't really know what may have happened or occurred, or the inside baseball, the inside information on that business or the market. That's not going to necessarily be disclosed, or it may be hard to discern. With a new business, you don't have any of those things to research, right? The due diligence is much cleaner.
But whether you're doing a white space or a resale of a franchise, there's so much information available to you. You know, what is the success rate of the franchise? How many franchisees? How many have exited the system? You can figure out the success rate. That was one of the questions in the chat. All of that, you know, Chris mentioned that they want you to do well, not just out of the goodness of their heart, you know, because the better you do, the better they do. You know, the system's growing, and that's a win-win. So they are very motivated to assist you to do well. But, you know, if you do close for whatever reason, illness or something else, that has to be disclosed, you know, and you understand that. So there is a lot of transparency and information to do your due diligence. And, you know, if you're buying a franchise, you know, you do have that system of success behind you. There's a question in the chat about getting into a new industry. And as Chris mentioned, most franchise systems and industries do not require relevant experience, and quite frankly, don't really care for that. You know, they want you to come in, you know, sort of with your professional experiences, and then they're the subject matter experts on HVAC or staffing or what have you, you know, or kickboxing. Like, I owned a kickboxing franchise. Am I a kickboxing expert? No. You know, I brought my professional experience, and they taught me how to operate that business successfully. Okay. There's a question about our legal assistance, you know, with setting up the business and an entity.
Yeah, if you want me to take that one, Sarah.
Please.
Setting up an LLC, a lot of people get really caught up in, you know, what I call the administrative minutia of setting up a business. And, you know, setting up an LLC is just a really administrative basic thing, right? You can do it online for a few $100s. It takes a day or two. I would recommend that you have a lawyer or an accountant set that up for you. I just think there's a few things you might want to consider that you might not do online, but even in those cases, it's typically going to be a very low cost, under $1,000 almost always. And, you know, you set that business up. So it's very quick.
And, you know, to be clear, the franchisor will also kind of have that startup checklist, you know, what needs to happen when. They don't necessarily care what kind of entity you have, but they want you to have one so you can get insurance, protect your business, etc. But I will also add, Chris, use a franchise attorney when you're looking at opportunities. You know, do not use your neighbor who's a family law attorney. You know, use someone who is an expert on the franchise side of law, you know, that understands what is typical and what is not. There's a question around, this is a great question. What is there guidance on training or determining the business is needed in a local area? If you don't mind, I would love to answer that, because so let's say, you know, I have a client that's in a pretty rural area. You know, part of our process is to work with the franchisor to go, does that market support, you know, a viable franchise in that area? Every good franchise, every franchise has viable territory requirements, you know, whether it be population, you know, traffic, etc. You know, like in senior care would be, you know, so many 200,000 plus in population, a certain number of seniors. And if your area maybe is too rural, maybe not every business is viable for that. You know, in a retail franchise, like if you're doing fitness or wellness, health and beauty, you know, the franchisor provides a lot of assistance in where to put it. If you're doing a brick and mortar franchise, the second most important question after Do you want to do it at all? Is where do I put it? And, having that franchisor be involved because they know what makes a good location. Should it be near another spa? Should it be near a Home Depot? What kind of traffic patterns? They assist in all of that. So, finding the viability of a territory is part of the process. Okay.
Sarah, if I could just build on that, what she said, guys, write that down because that's great advice. When we talked about the mistakes that you'll make if you start a business from scratch, if it involves a location, good luck. Good luck finding the right location if you don't know that business through and through. When you access franchising, you access, the lifetime experience of the many, many people that work for that organization, know what works and knows what doesn't work. And a lot of times you may do it on your own. You don't even know what questions to ask. You don't even know what things to consider. So this is one of the millions of decisions and mistakes that you are likely to make if you open a business on your own. Listen, I'm not saying if you're a true entrepreneur and you want to be unshackled and you're willing to take on risk, have at it, right? By all means. But most people are looking for something that has a safety net down at the bottom in some way, right? And some level of risk mitigation. I just want to point out what she said is a really good example of mistakes that you will most certainly make if you do it on your own.
And we all know those black holes of retail where they've had 5 or 6 businesses in the same location. And I'm like, you know what? I love the persistence that people think they're going to make a go of it, but something is not working in that particular place. Yeah. So, you're paying for that expertise that they know what makes a good location. Here's another excellent question. This looks like someone who's probably done a little bit of research. What about one or multiple territories? So in retail franchising, there is protected territory, which is typically a radius ring around your location. Can be 3 miles, 5 miles, 10, the more you can get, the better. In a service franchise, your protected territories typically, not always, but typically it is by zip code, and so you own a certain amount of zip codes and those customers. Can you buy multiple territories? Absolutely, you can. And, part of the coaching is to say, hey, on average, the franchisees in this system own 1.5 territories, meaning half the system owns 2, half own 1. I would argue, some people get very excited and they want to buy the entire state. I think a couple territories for some people make sense. If you're younger and you want to build an empire and you really want to make a mark, and you don't, you're concerned that someone else may buy it, especially with a franchise that is really growing. The good and the bad thing about franchising is by the time most of us have heard of it, a lot of the good territory is gone. And so a big part of fit is ensuring that it's available. But having neighbors is not a bad thing. Chris and I have neighboring, we're franchisees, franchise owners, and we have neighboring territories. There's some advantages, to that, meaning maybe we might pool our marketing and that kind of thing. But I'd say multiple territories make sense for the right person. And that'll be part of our process just to see if it's right for you. But if you buy multiple units or multiple territories, typically you don't have to ready, set, go and develop it all at once. You have a schedule, so it may be for the first year you're working in the first territory, and then starting in year 2, you're starting to develop that second territory. In retail franchising, it will be a little bit longer. Maybe if you buy 3 of, like a Orange Theory Fitness, that you open 1 every 18 months or 1 every year. So that would all be very clear to you. Okay. And then, Chris, there's some questions in here asked in a few different ways around the Vetrepreneur success rate. How do we do in our placement, and what happens if someone is the wrong fit? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, for sure it happens. We do a lot of work up front to make sure that that first of all, you're right for franchising. And, you know, sometimes I would say maybe one of the examples that we find pretty often is folks that clearly have difficulty managing their own money. It's going to be really hard for you to manage the resources in and out of a business, right? So if you're having difficulty managing your own personal finances, it's probably going to be hard to do that in the business side. You know, that's probably one of the leading things. The other one is that we find that you're not well suited is just people not willing to take on risk. And honestly, that's most people, right? Business ownership, either outright in a non-franchise system or within a franchise is literally, it's not for most people. There is the risk of losing money, and there are a lot of decisions to be made. With franchising, you do have a supporting cast, but you know, the buck stops with you. And a lot of people shy away from that. And when they're excited up front, it gets down to it. Like, man, I just can't take on that risk. Fear sets in, and they walk away. So, you know, listen, our job is, first of all, that fear is natural. You're human. You wouldn't be human if you didn't have it, right? Everyone is scared. Just like, you know, you'll hear entertainers or athletes say when the game's on the line or when it's time to take the stage, there's always butterflies. That's very natural. You're human. But our job is to really say, let's go through and let's trust the due diligence process that we've gone through, and let's make an informed decision. Let's separate ourselves from the emotion that we're naturally going to feel, and let's make an informed decision as to whether or not this is the right thing for me. But yeah, listen, when we feel like it's not a good fit, you know, we'll let you know, and or you'll find out on your own. Really, it's your decision to make at the end of the day, right? We are here to facilitate and educate you and support you along the way, and guide you through a very proven process for making a decision, but it's your decision.
And if I just may add, I think the other thing that will really dictate success is your skill set and how you enjoy spending your time in a business. You know, so this is not a job interview. Now, you are picking the franchise and they're picking you, no question about it, but we don't want to hear anything. So when you're filling out the assessment, if you don't like doing something, be very upfront about that. And specifically when it comes to business development, you know, if you hate networking and the thought of going to a Chamber of Commerce meeting and going, "Hi, I'm Sarah Brown, I own a blank, blank, blank," makes you break out in hives, well, then let's not match you to a business that requires that. You know, let's find one that can leverage your other skills. So really, I think one of the biggest sort of correlations to success is matching it to your skills and how you want to spend your time. And in my experience, where people fail in franchising is they don't show up. You know, they buy a franchise and they think, now I don't have to do anything. You know, franchising is a running head start, you know, and why veterans tend to do better or do well in franchising is that they will follow the SOP, you know, and the processes put in place. But really be upfront with yourself on what success looks like and how do you want to spend your time. And then the last question here, we've gone a little bit over, so I think this will be the last, is are there available grants? There are a few that could provide it, but I would say that would be the cherry on top. You know, that is not the typical way that people invest in a franchise. And if they get one, it's a small portion of their funding.
Yeah, I think that's extremely well said. I would say, just to add to that, if you're counting on a grant to start your business, you're probably not cut out for owning a business.
Yes.
You're going to need to assume a little bit of risk and assume a level of independence and decision making, and the buck stops with me kind of a thing. And if it's all dependent upon a grant, you're probably just not well suited for it. It is the cherry on top, like Sarah said.
Absolutely. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself, but is your business. And so having skin in the game and investing some of your capital, you know, not everyone wants to do that. And, you know, making the leap from an employee mindset into a business owner is, you know, partly what will help you determine if you're ready to do it. And I hope you are. And I think most of you probably on this call are. And let's also not downplay how fun the process is. This is fun, looking at businesses and doing a self-assessment. Most of you on the phone have probably said, you know what, I would love to own my own business. There's a lot of cachet in being a business owner and talking about it. I've done it a couple times. Very enjoyable. Every business has issues, but they're not huge issues, and we'll help you determine how to address them. So I think you'll find it an educational process, and we'll be with you the entire part to get you to what Chris calls that decision point. So if you are ready, please check on the QR code and schedule a call. And I hope for some of you on the phone that I have the honor of being able to work with you.
Yeah. Well said, Sarah. Thank you guys, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Sarah,
Yeah,
for hosting.
have a great weekend, everyone.
From the battlefields to the boardrooms, the spirit of a veteran is unyielding. Risk takers, disciplined executors, team builders. Military service has forged us into professionals with the ability to get it done. But what's next after service? Meet the legends. Fred Smith, founder of FedEx. Jewett Cathy, founder of Chick-fil-A. Ross Perot, founder of Perot Systems. Phil Knight, founder of Nike. And Gordon Logan, founder of Sport Clips. They turned their military discipline into entrepreneurial success. And so can you. Why franchising? It's the ideal pathway for a vetrepreneur. A proven business model, a roadmap to success, and an industry that understands the skills you bring. Franchising means using proven systems, intensive training, and a support system designed to make you successful. 1 out of every 7 franchises is owned by a military veteran. You can join their ranks. Your next mission awaits, and we're here to guide you. Your legacy is just beginning.